Hey, it's a show or something.
Welcome back, everybody.
I mean, all 10 of you dedicated listeners, I'm pretty sure like 4 are from us, from just going in and checking it out, but
I listened to it. That's fun. I've been telling people about it.
I don't tell anyone
Been
about anything.
enjoying it.
You know?
There's our problem. We're not getting the word out.
No. They'll
Should
find a
start
way.
taking out YouTube ads. Our target audience is people that talk about spaghetti wrestling.
Let's make an Instagram account for it, and then just buy like 10 million followers, and then eventually people will see it.
Yeah, and the only real followers are us. There's 3 actual followers.
Yeah, but it's private, so we have to approve them. So there's no
Right.
real followers except for us.
Right.
Everyone else is like Action Indian Man controlling like 300 profiles.
That'd be a lot of Indian men.
Yeah, you know.
To be fair, there are a lot of Indian men, so that helps.
I mean, well, they're not all men, Marcus.
Marcus, you're pretty quiet
You're
too.
very quiet. No.
Yeah. Not really. What's your input at? Are you at like 0.8 like it's supposed to be?
Well, that shouldn't affect how loud he is in Discord.
Right. Interesting.
This is better?
That is better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the real question is, do we keep that in or do we restart?
Oh, we're gonna keep it in.
Yeah,
Oh,
why
so-
not? We're a bunch of buffoons.
Yeah,
Well,
that's how this
I am.
is. Gotta leave it in.
All right. Well, the show's going. So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Just kind of
What?
start our show off this week. I was listening to a podcast. It's the American Party podcast by Dan Holloway and fucking what's his name? The Medal of Honor winner. Ugh.
There's lots of those.
Can't remember his name, and it's bothering me. Oh well.
What
But
branch?
they had a Marines. It is recent.
Dakota Meyer?
Yeah, that dude. So they had a really good question on this week because that podcast is kind of about like it's not about being a political party. It's about American ideals in general and talking about politics from the face of people who actually like America and not from a political party and that.
Okay.
And take it from there. It's a strong podcast. I suggest you check it out. They're only on like episode like 10 or something, so there's not like a huge backlog. But it's some pretty interesting conversations. And one of the ones or topics they had this week was, what master do you serve? And it got me thinking. Like, mine's very obvious. Like, right? I serve the military. Like, that's my master, right? Like, right. But for those of y'all that are civilians, who is your master? Like, who or what entity controls most of your life as you go, and why do you let it control you?
Like most decisions or like most hours?
What is hours control? Like, what just leads to the largest influence on your life that you are not able to control?
Probably my work.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have to go with that. Or if you wanted to be ultra woke, you could just say technology. Like your phone.
That's fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, those two, I
Well,
think.
I thought this.
Outside of work, yeah. But if you kind of like check work out of it, then it's kind of like I'm distracted most of the time.
Yeah.
So ADHD is your master?
Yeah. Poor scheduling.
All right. Well, I thought that was going to be a bit more of an interesting topic than that.
I mean, the idea was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I mean, at least I tried.
yeah.
Here's a question I had, just a quick one. So I was listening to the Jocko podcast. They talk about it a lot. I listen to it a lot. He had a really good saying, and it was, "That's the long pole for the tent." And I was like, oh, that's just a kind of a fun saying.
That's such a Jocko saying.
Exactly. But so I went and I talked to the janitor guy because he's great, and I talked to him because I'm a good person. Not to, this is like you talk to a janitor guy, he's really nice and smart. And he hit me with, got to keep both your oars in the water, and wherever you end up, there you are. And I was wondering if you guys had any haikus of profound wisdom to add to the conversation.
Perception is reality. It's not really a haiku.
No brains in a jar around here.
But I feel like perception is reality really explains a lot of things and is a good guidance on how you should act. In that reality is not reality. Like perception is reality. What actually happens doesn't matter. It's all about how someone else perceives it.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a good one.
you can be doing all sorts of good things and be trying your ass off. Like really easy one is work. You can just keep your nose to the grindstone and work your ass off and be the best worker on the face of the planet. But if people don't know you're a good worker, it doesn't matter. And it starts to get difficult because I think majority of people who want to be good workers just want to work hard. They don't like selling themselves. They don't like showing that they're a good worker because it starts to feel like you're embellishing, you're kind of being an asshole, and it's bragging, and that's not something we should do.
Yeah.
But
It's actively like you're told not to brag.
Yeah.
And like that's a good thing is to not brag.
But there's a difference.
But you need to
between-
sell yourself.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between bragging and selling yourself. And that idea of perception as reality, I think, is often overlooked by people, where they think reality is reality. And if I just do a good job, people will recognize that I do good things. And it's like, no. If you emphasize that you do a good job, then they will recognize that you do a good job. Their perception of you is their reality of you.
Yeah.
Their perception of you is their reality.
Yeah.
That's a good one too.
That kind of reminds me of Machiavelli. Holy shit, I can't talk. But like,
What's new?
obviously, it's if you have to pick. Yeah, if you have to pick one, it's obviously be feared more than loved. But like, he talks about like charitable acts. But like, it's great that you're a charitable person, but it doesn't matter if no one recognizes that you're a charitable person. So you have to like you said, kind of like advertise it. In which case, like, obviously, if your intent is to like make yourself look good and not actually like if it's make yourself look good and it doesn't revolve around you just being a good person, then it kind of defeats the purpose of it. But at the same time, like, you guys can probably
So like from a Machiavellian view, the argument would be you should give out gold coins. You should donate 1 million gold coins to the city as an anonymous donor.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't help
No,
you.
it doesn't help you at all. Yeah, like, so in other words, like, it would pay for you to flaunt your money or flaunt your generosity, to an extent. So yeah, I mean, like, that's kind of it, what I was going after, so.
Yeah,
Very true.
that's solid. So we have
Do we want to get into our topics?
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's go for it.
I'm excited this week.
Just bringing them back up so that way we have a little bit of an idea going forward about what's to come. Marcus is going to talk about the recent news of aliens.
And Joe Rogan stole that bit from us.
Yes.
Fair warning.
Yeah, I
Yes.
mean, he's obviously
Damn
following
Straight
us.
up.
And
He loves new
It's the
creators.
Google algorithm. He's listening in.
yeah.
He's one of our 10 listeners.
We're doing pretty good then. Could you
Could you imagine that? Could you imagine if
Joe Rogan, if you're out there, we're doing this for you.
Yeah.
I hope you can. If you're one of the 10 people that listen to our podcast,
Just give us
we
a
know
sign.
you're stealing our ideas.
Say
Right. Give us a sign.
potatoes, tomatoes are delicious on your next podcast. We'll get it.
Just bring up DMT like 3 or 4 times. I mean, that's not a good one. That's just a regular thing.
So Mark's talking about aliens. I'm going to talk about home gyms and their rise since the pandemic and the shortage of iron. Well, specifically lifting iron since the pandemic. And Keegan is going to
And then
talk
I
about
think,
why is
yeah.
why is it considered anti-veteran to be anti-war?
I think we should wrap with that one. I feel like that one will lead to a lot of discussion.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I feel like ending on that.
Who wants to go first?
I
Marcus?
mean, yeah, I'll go
Me?
first.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I watched Joe Rogan's latest podcast episode, I believe. Talks about aliens. And then he's got Jacques Vallée, I believe, and James Fox, who produced and I'm assuming directed the Phenomenon, which is about like aliens and stuff like that. Came out.
What's the background on the situation that we're talking about?
Oh, the background. Good. Good
Yeah.
idea. So
Should start at the beginning, I believe.
yeah. All right. So
Because we had this bit first. He just stole it from
Yeah.
us before we could ever record
Clearly.
it. That's how.
clearly, okay.
Right.
So anyway,
Copyright infringement.
Yes. So It was about like late April. I want to say is like when I was like this is my personal experience with it. I was like upstairs in my old house
You
with
saw
my
an alien.
roommates. Yeah,
He tried to probe you.
He tried probing me. He flashed me. Anyways, so we were like
Understandable.
upstairs, and then like suddenly we were just like checking our phones or something like that. I think, and we brought up like the idea of that apparently the government said that aliens exist, and we're like, wow, what now? What's gonna happen now in 2020? So we're like, wow, this is quite interesting, because like when does the government just come out and say alien life forms exist? So like, yeah.
Well, apparently in April.
Yeah. So apparently during the middle of a pandemic, when we're trapped in our houses.
It felt very much like an active release to like distract from something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there was some footage that leaked, and then like 2 days later, there was like an official DoD release statement about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was a short release, and you could find it. But there was like this was a FOIA request thing, and then there was some stuff that leaked, so we figured we'd get ahead of it. Here's some videos, and they had a bunch of links to just these videos, and it's usually some crappy little image, but then there's like some thing on a radar that's not plane shaped. It's like a little dot or
Cigar.
shaped like a Tic Tac or something, but there's a cigar, right? And it's all these various shapes. And then if you listen to the pilots, they're usually like freaking out. They're like, "What the fuck is that?" Because they only ever see planes. But so they had this active release, but it was in the middle of the COVID. It was right after stimulus or right before stimulus. It was still in like the Tiger King's window.
Oh God, yeah.
But they just released. Oh, it feels like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, they just released this giant thing about aliens,
Yeah.
and everyone just kind of shrugged. Because it felt too much like a distraction.
Yeah, I would say so, and like that's how I definitely still view it today. But like they kind of talk about that too in the Joe Rogan's podcast. He talks about like how literally people were just like, "Oh, okay," and then like within a day or two, it was just like gone, like no one cared about it. And he was talking about like how because of social media, and like how people pay attention to certain things, like it must have just like not like seemed super important to people, I guess. And it was just gone.
Just didn't catch.
Yeah, it just didn't catch. But like they talk about UFOs and stuff like that for a little bit, and experience in. I don't want to say it's South Africa, but it's like in Southern Africa, which I kind of want to bring up a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it very much felt like a distraction, and I read a couple articles, and I was like kind of comparing and contrasting them. They both talked about. Both talked about some of the like former people who were involved with it. A senator from Nevada who definitely wishes to like see like the truth come out about like extraterrestrials, and he seemed pretty
It's
open.
good tourism for Nevada.
Yeah.
That's what I like it going for them. They got sand and aliens.
And casinos.
Got the little alien in.
So yeah, and then I kind of compared a couple of them. One of them was more like straightforward, just discussing like I think one was from like the New York Times. One of them was from like Wall Street. Oh, NBC News. Love that. So yeah, it was like one of them was more addressing like the concerns of like what this organization does, what like helped reveal information on the existence of like UFOs and potential aliens, and one was like it was more technological based, so it was like more of like what if these are vehicles from like other countries, and talked about like the structure of the group, this general interest group or whatever you want to call it. Let's call it that for now. And like why people are spending money, why the government's spending money into this, and like it breaks it down into like why spend money on this, because we're focusing on other countries like China and Russia and like their development of aircraft, and like you focus more on that. And the other article was more like, hey man, we got footage here of these like cigar or Tic Tac shaped vehicles from like 2017, and now the government is now coming out and releasing them. Not everything is 100% released, but most of it is available now. You can look it up.
has anyone asked Tic Tac if they've just made a really big Tic Tac?
Yeah, it's
Shot out of a cannon over the Pacific
Yeah.
a
Ocean.
marketing
And has
scheme.
anyone looked into their Amazon purchases, because they might have just bought a trebuchet?
Ooh,
Shit, we gotta look.
I like that.
Tic Tac. Yeah.
But it was just
That was us.
yeah.
We're the aliens.
It was just interesting to see like the differences in like how these were written. But to me, it very much just seemed like a way to distract people. Obviously, shortly, like a month later, like the George Floyd incidents and stuff like that, and the riots and protesting, whatever you want to
That'll
call it.
definitely distract people.
That was definitely way more distracting than aliens. I mean,
But the that didn't feel like a distraction
No.
sent out from the government.
no,
though.
not at all.
That's like whenever my dad says like whenever there's a big release of something crazy, there's always something happening underneath. Like there's a healthcare bill that passed,
Yeah.
or there's a new tax or something that got cut, or they stripped the rights from something that had, or they dropped a new pipeline through some big like nature reserve or
Yeah.
something. But I wonder what that covered. Like I wonder what happened there.
Yeah. But it just seemed very forced, and I think some people were just. Maybe that's why I didn't stay didn't stay in the limelight very long, because it felt very forced. Because like, why out of all the time, like in the history of the U.S., you would just come out and say, yeah, here's some UFO videos, it's real. I don't know. Like I thought it was very forced. So that's kind of like how I felt about it.
It was a short release. Like it was less than a page.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was about a page. You can look it up, like you said. I looked at it briefly. I didn't like think too much about it, but yeah, it just talks about some of the people's involvement and stuff like that. The like director of the program, comes out and says, yeah, there may or may not be like life, but like he kind of like hints at like, yeah, that's what they're going for. Also,
It was not a hard confirm or deny.
Yeah.
Just like
it was there.
this stuff got released.
Yeah, he just threw it out there. Pretty big guy too. You can look him up at
Fair
some
enough.
point.
He's physically large. He's like
Yeah.
6'8".
300,
Yeah.
350.
Where is?
Big hoss.
I wrote down his
Plays
name.
basketball.
He'd probably like lift in like a home gym or something and have like a bunch of iron so nobody else could have it.
Yeah,
It'd almost create like an iron shortage or something.
It's caused
Yeah.
by the aliens.
exactly.
That's
The
my big
aliens. It's
review.
all connected. They're coming to Earth to steal the iron from the Earth's core.
You know, even if there was aliens, Marcus would never see him because he'd just keep looking in his nose.
Yeah,
You got him there.
yeah, you got me.
Boom roasted.
Boom! Roasted.
So that brings me up to another conversation. I wanted to talk about. Did you guys listen to that Joe Rogan podcast episode? No.
I did not. I was gonna listen to the bit, but I got distracted between my girlfriend, work, and being distracted. I'm good at that. So
Okay, so like that. That's all right. So like, I'm gonna summarize this quick to you
Yeah.
guys, and then I just want to open
Do
up a
it.
discussion quickly. So they talk about some aliens allegedly come to like this like school in like somewhere in southern Africa, and they all send them like a similar message telepathically or something like that. These students then get together like 20 years later, and most of them all like count for the same message or whatever, and it's something about like saving the environment. Don't quote me on it, but pretty much, yeah, and how important the environment is to sustaining life on Earth. And
Why would an alien give a fuck about our environment?
well,
that feels a little convenient.
yeah, it does. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is, Jacques Vallée was asking, why do you think why they try and reach out to like these school children and stuff like that, and not like military officials? Is there like a sense of innocence or a sense of like potential understanding, or like where they're not as closed-minded as like someone who would be like in like the military and stuff like that? Or do you think they feel like safer approaching children compared to just like hanging out in a military base where there's active?
I know though, like if you were some big general, and you underwent some like if you start hearing voices in your head for whatever reason, like I feel like you're not. It's kind of like the police culture where it's if you go to a psychologist, you lose work days, and then there's like, oh, they went to go see this, they might not be
It is.
rock solid in between the ears. And it's so much easier to dismiss that when you've been trained to not listen to the weird things that you hear. Plus, like a lot of military guys, like they have a lot of experience. They might just genuinely just kind of have zone out. They might have not slept for 60 hours or something. They might be hearing voices.
I mean, the other thing is, if you're an alien, why would you communicate telepathically at all? If you're so technologically advanced that you can get across the fucking galaxy to our little ass planet, you can probably just give the president a call on his fucking phone.
But see,
And
the
You
thing
communicate
is,
with some higher technology like
If you're gonna
messenger pigeons.
if you're going to communicate with one or even a group of individuals on the planet, why would it be 20 random ass fucking school children in South Africa who no one's going to believe because they're kids? The fact that they can all recount the same message 20 years later is not
Most.
important. There's plenty of studies out there that show that people buy into the same thing when they're around each other. Like, it's
Yeah.
bullshit. It doesn't work. Witness testimonial is the worst form of evidence when it comes to a court of law. If you're
My name
gonna,
is Max, and I don't want aliens to exist.
no, I think aliens exist.
I'm angry at school children in South
they-
Africa
well, yeah,
for
I am.
implying that there's life in the universe.
I am angry at school children in South Africa.
Hashtag buzzkill.
I hate this fucking conversation because instead of actually taking rational points of view, people just start grasping. And they just start just clutching and
Next thing you're
clawing
gonna
at
say
things
is that
make
voodoo
no
isn't real.
goddamn sense.
okay, that's fair. The other thing, what I was gonna say is like I never thought about this until they brought it up, but like you said, like why wouldn't the alien care, like message like the president or something like that? But like why would they care about the president anyways? Like to them, he could just be like another figure. Like if you know what I mean, like he's already got his own ideas. Fuck him. Like why do we care? Like when we
Because
Good point.
if they're technologically advanced to make it that far across the galaxy, they understand the point of having a centralized leader. So even if they are like a perfect utopian communist society and everyone is a perfect equal, they will still ideally, or like maybe not ideally, that's the wrong word for this conversation, but they will still be able to like look at someone else's society and go, they're not like us. What's important to them? Because even if they're a perfect utopian communist and just symbiotic and just perfect, everyone in their society is
Dirty commie
completely evil.
aliens.
Exactly. Fuck them.
that's why we killed so many of them in the
Fucking
50s.
Fucking Reds. They're still going to have centralized communication, right? They still have to have some sort of work structure. So whether it is a like universal thought pattern that they're controlled from by somewhere, or they have some sort of leadership, they will understand leadership and understand the purpose and the point of leaders, and they will reach out to our leaders. And if you're going to look for a leader on the planet, it's really hard to argue that the President of the United States wouldn't be somewhere pretty high on that list. I could see them going to the President of the United States, fucking whatever that head person of China is, and maybe somewhere in Europe. But I mean, those are the only like real powers on this planet, are us and China. You could argue India's getting there, but they're so India focused, they have pretty much nothing to do with the rest of the planet. I could see them talking to India because they have so much to do in India because they control such a large body of people.
It's my understanding that they're the leading export in Indian food, so
I would have
I
guessed
will
Thai
watch my
food.
mouth when it comes to that.
I would have guessed Thai food, but
Oh god, that reminds me, but never mind. Different conversation. It's not even relevant. You just said Thai and it made me think of it. So
I don't want to hear what
okay.
you do with your girlfriend, Marcus.
oh. I mean,
Okay. Hey, Max, what's up with that iron shortage you wanted to talk about? Let's
Yeah,
transition to that.
I need weights. People keep stealing my weights.
Why'd you make them out of concrete?
fuck.
Because I'd rather just buy iron weights. I really don't want to go through the effort of making the fucking molds.
Mm.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. But anyway,
Blocks.
so one of the more interesting things that has happened during the pandemic is there's a massive shortage in exercise equipment and correlating massive rise in interest in exercise equipment. through like trends and searches and stuff. But I recently moved to a new place and I have a basement now for the first time in a long time, and I'm setting up
Alaska.
a home gym. Don't tell people where I am. And I'm setting up a home gym.
It's the largest state. It's bigger than like a lot of countries.
Yeah.
Not
Also,
by
can I point-
population, and the populations are clustered into small areas. There's
Okay.
only like three.
Yeah,
or
but
four.
I didn't say where you live. I just said Alaska.
We have said military and Alaska. There's like 4 places I could be.
I feel like that's non-specific.
Uh,
Joe Rogan's gonna show up at your house and steal all of our podcast ideas. He's coming for you.
He's
He's
gonna.
gonna make you try DMT, feed you some elk.
No, we're gonna go shoot an elk,
This is true.
Why not?
and then he's gonna feed me to a bear. But I've been trying to set up a home gym, and I've been having a lot of problems finding kettlebells and plates in the town I'm in. Just part of it's because it's Alaska, and there's a pretty small supply chain up here for stuff because there's not a lot of people that live up here. But part of it is that there's just retailers have a massive backlog of workout equipment. So I found a couple of, or 2 good articles. One of them is an article based off of the other article. So the first article I found was Inside the Great Kettlebell Shortage of 2020 by GQ. And then the other one is New York City's kettlebell shortage. People are kind of freaking out by the New York Times. And it has a lot of good, like, base knowledge of it, and just kind of showing, like, how much the pandemic has fucked us up and how much people are really going after this shit. So people have been having a steady increase in wanting a home gym ever since the coronavirus and news of maybe having a lockdown has come out. But there was one day in particular that really fucked it. Like, it was March 13th, whenever President Trump declared a lockdown or declared a state of emergency in the United States. We had already seen struggling supply lines with China because of coronavirus being big in China. And most iron implements or steel implements in the United States that are exercise equipment are made in China because they're easy to be mass produced, and they're cheaper over there because people here charge more and have like fair labor laws and all that fun shit. And just generally
Weird how that works.
generally a higher level of living and higher like normal pay. So like if you make something in the US, it's going to cost more because people expect to be paid more here. Right? Really simple economics, right? But the supply lines are going low, so people are the major retailers like Rogue and Rep Fitness and Amazon and Walmart and all them were already experiencing inventory shortages because they weren't able to keep up because their suppliers were closed essentially. Well, then March 13th hit, and then it all disappeared. Rep Fitness is a Colorado gym retailer, pretty much sold out in like that week of all their home fitness equipment. Rogue went on a backlog. Everyone was just gone. Like for example, in Syracuse, New York, there's an exercise equipment store whose sales skyrocketed more than 600% in a couple of days.
That's substantial.
About this time, major retailers like eBay, Amazon, and Walmart had 3-week-long waiting lists and were marking up equipment up to 150%.
Jesus.
There was a consumer interest study done by Yelp that found that across the United States since March, interest in fitness equipment had risen by 500%. During March, Stackline found a study of e-commerce trends to find that weight training was the 8th fastest growing category. And this is in the middle of the pandemic, and it was ahead of paper towels, hand sanitizer, and toilet paper. So there was just this massive initial interest, right? And everything sold out. Everything was gone. No one had anything. So the next,
Even like plates and bars and stuff, that's not as, like, when you think of a home gym, you think of like resistance bands and dumbbells and like kettlebells, but it was everything. It was bars and weights and
everything. Everything's going out. Even like more expensive piece of exercise equipment, because it's not just fucking us poor peasants that are trying to put stuff into our house. It's people that actually can afford to drop 10 grand and make their garage look like they took a 15 by 20 foot section out of a retail gym. Like you have I'm sure everyone's seen it. Like all the YouTube videos of look at my new home gym, or all the Instagram posts of look at my new home gym. They're everywhere.
It's a squat rack and a bar and
Yeah,
a bunch of weights.
every major celebrity you know has one. They all decided to go and put one in their gym. Like if they're a reasonably fit person or in shape and you follow them, I bet in the past 6 months they have posted a photo of their new home gym. It's happening to everyone. But kind of getting back on track. So this presents a problem. Like how do we get back on track? How do we start meeting our clients' needs? How do we start getting more kettlebells and stuff? And it's actually been pretty interesting. This was something I was expecting to be interesting to talk about. But they've started sourcing different places, and it's actually brought a lot of traditional manufacturing work back to the United States, at least temporarily, where people are starting, like bigger companies like Rogue are starting to source out to smaller, like mom and pop style foundries. Like there is a Cumberland foundry in Rhode Island that Rogue Fitness is contracting out their kettlebells to right now. And they're not making a lot. They can make like maybe 40 to 50 kettlebells a day, so it's obviously not sustainable. But
it's something.
It's starting to bring some jobs back, but not forever. Like the owner said, there's specifically in reference to the Rogue Fitness stuff, and just this kind of felt throughout American foundries. But he said there's a demand for it now, but how long is that going to last? When people go back to gyms and the craze is all over, is all of this worth it? And what he's talking about is the equipment and like the casts, the mold and stuff to make kettlebells and more expensive piece of equipment are prohibitively expensive. They're saying that the casts to make the kettlebells were going to be running $50,000 to $100,000.
Oh,
That's absurd.
And if you're not going to make that many kettlebells,
no. And the only reason that this particular foundry was willing to take on that task is because they had actually gotten back into the kettlebell business way back in 2008 during that recession, because there was an owner of a Rhode Island gym who's getting fed up with multi-piece kettlebells, because kettlebells for a long time were, when they were cheaply made, weren't cast in one piece of iron. You had the bell and you had the handle, and they were attached together. And so you're doing kettlebell swings with a 50-pound kettlebell, and all of a sudden a 45-pound piece of iron detaches from the handle, and you have a big hole in the wall.
Mm-hmm.
That's bad.
So he got kind of fed up with that, and he designed a idea for a one-piece kettlebell, and he went to this foundry, the Cumberland foundry in Rhode Island, and they worked something out. And in about 2010, this dude actually started selling his kettlebells to Rogue, and then Rogue started working with the Cumberland foundry to start to develop the patterns and how they can mass produce them with Rogue, and sold that idea. So there's a little bit of history between them and Rogue, and that's one of the reasons why they went there. They already had the equipment and they knew how to manufacture them and do that. But for a lot of the rest of the domestic foundries, they don't really see it as worth it, because they don't want to take on partnerships with the fitness industry. They're very hesitant without like a solid commitment, some form of contract, because they feel like they're just going to bail on them as soon as the Chinese suppliers are up and running again, which I think is fair. Like,
Yeah.
very wishy-washy.
it's one of those things too. Is like you want to buy American-made stuff, but is the quality difference in a kettlebell that different?
Yeah,
Like,
I really don't think so anymore. Maybe then, but I think with
if it's a cast one piece,
yeah.
it's
So that kind of brings us about to now. So very anecdotally, going to physical stores, I can't find shit. There's one store in my area that actually had a decent selection of kettlebells and dumbbells, but they're going for a prohibitively expensive price. They're significantly marked up, even with like the extra cost of getting them to Alaska. I can't find plates. Like I go to any of the like normal stores to look at kettlebells, they're just not there. But I did look around online, and it looks like most major retailers have theirs back in stock and are able to get to them. And that doesn't look like it's going to be any weight at all. And like if they are missing some, it's the usual, like they're missing like one or two out of a set for a certain type. So it seems like it's getting back to normal with that.
where you can get the ones you want.
Yeah, but I was pretty surprised to see that there was a legitimate shortage in exercise equipment, and just how much sales skyrocketed and how much consumer interest shifted towards home gyms in that time.
So, can I point something out?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So like, I work at Walmart, so I get a slight discount there. So I go on their app a lot on my phone. If I'm going to order something, if I can, I'll order it through Walmart because I get a slight discount. Um, with like that being said, I've noticed like yeah, there are a bunch of pieces like of equipment you can still buy and stuff like that. And like you said, most of it's now coming back in stock because like I was one of those people where I needed a new barbell. Like when all this shit happened, I couldn't get one. It was on like the back order for Target, so I had to go find someone in real life. But like, there's still, from like what I've noticed, there's still a shortage in like 45-pound plates, and the ones they do have, they're like the CrossFit bumper ones, what are way more because it's bumper and it's not just cast iron. So like, I did notice that, but like, for the most part, yeah, there is like a set, I guess. Like you can still buy sets now, like which is good. But like I've just noticed that there are like you said some inconsistencies. So I don't know. Thought I'd throw that out there.
Whenever I'm just personally shopping, that the stuff that is available is usually just incredibly marked up.
Oh yeah.
Typically, I'll buy plates used for about $1 to $1.50 pound. Like
That's
about
pretty
2 or
good.
3 years ago, if anything more than about $1.50 pound, someone was trying to rip you off unless they were calibrated plates. But now you're hard pressed to find anything below $2 a pound, and more than likely, if someone has something posted, it's going to be $2.50, $3 a pound.
And like,
And it's just no, go fuck yourself. I'm not paying $3 a pound for a plate.
yeah, I'm not paying $200 for a 45-pound bumper plate. That's my thing. I'm not doing that. I'll have a stack of
I'm
625s.
curious about the long term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the long term effects. Like, I wonder if these home gyms will expand a little bit, or if I wonder if all of these kettlebells and everything will go back on the market.
Yeah, I can.
If then like Facebook Marketplace, and then it'll drop to like 50 cents a pound for plates or whatever.
That's what'll happen. I think this is a fad.
But do you think the base burn for home gyms will stay up a little bit? Because I think a lot of people are realizing if I have a garage and I have a gym there, I don't need a gym membership.
So
I think a lot of people got turned on to the home gym.
I think
So it's going to for sure go down.
especially with the rise of CrossFit, home gyms were already on the rise anyway. Because one of the things CrossFit really did was it made people realize that you don't actually need a whole fuck ton of equipment to work out. So like the good CrossFit gyms, the ones that are few and far between, like they made people realize like you need a plate or you need a bar, you need maybe 200, 250 pounds, you need a pull-up bar, and maybe some other small stuff like maybe having a bench and a squat rack or some sort of squat rack.
Some resistance bands for stretching.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like for big stuff, like most people wouldn't bat an eye at dropping $20 to $50 on something that's actually a hobby. Like you go out and do that every day or every other day for like multiple times a week. $50 on something, most people wouldn't hesitate to drop that, and that's what you're looking at for like a set of rings or like bands or something. Like it's gradual, but I think this just exploded. I think there's going to be a continual rise in home gyms anyway, but I think it just exploded because of the pandemic. But
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
as for the future, there's going to be a lot of people that have are a little bit more money in their wallets, that bought a lot of equipment, that found out that they don't actually use all that equipment, and they're going to be selling that equipment. They're not going to hold on to it. So I think in about 4 or 5 years, whenever they realize they don't use that equipment, if you keep your eyes out, you can find some nice pieces of gear for not so cheap, or for
Cheap.
yeah.
I'm curious what the timeline for that'll be. Say for like 4 or 5 years. Like in my head, it's like I would say probably 6 8 months after the pandemic's over.
Nah, because they're going to hold on to it. They're not going to be willing to get rid of it. Because
They're gonna have the emotional attachment. Like I did pay a lot of money for this at one point.
and they'll probably still use it. A lot of them will still think it's a good idea to hold on to it because they're going to keep using it. But CrossFit, in and of itself, is still a fad. It's a longer fad, and it's one that has shown a remarkable tendency to hold on. But the way it goes through most people is it's a fad in their life. It's not something most people do for more than like 4 to 8 years. right?
It's too intense to get into it long term. It's not like biking.
No,
You
well,
can get into bicycling and you can just bike forever.
and
But
there's no real programming. There's no sense of like real injury prevention until you start getting some higher levels, and they're seeing some improvements, and some
Yeah.
people are actually working at getting that more into their sport. But you have a high level of injury and not a lot of programming, and it's not something a lot of people can do when they're old.
It's also expensive, like when you actually go to like a box, because you're paying for a coach too to lead your session or whatever, and that's like where most of the money goes to. Because like I thought about it and I'm not like trying to be disrespectful or mean, but like when I
No,
found
fuck
out the
them. Fuck
price,
CrossFit.
well, I went once and it was an enjoyable experience, but like the price just kind of made me go, oh, I don't need this. Like I'm not paying for 2 gym memberships so I can do some like nice
it's like
cardio.
weirdly too expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I get it. I get it. You're paying for the instructor, which they need to get paid too, but like not for me. Not for me. So that doesn't
Yeah.
help it.
Want to hit this last topic?
Yeah,
Yes.
let's fucking send it.
Okay, I feel like this is the big topic. So the original question I have it written down: why is being anti-war considered anti-veteran? So kind of the background for me on this, why this question comes up. When I was in high school, we had close family friends, and every year he would come in and he would speak to the history class during the Vietnam unit. It's like junior year or whatever. His name was Buzz, and Buzz went to the U of M, played football, applied to med school, didn't get in, but he had sent in his student deferment for getting into med school, but then he didn't, and then they found him, and they're like, this is a false deferment. Because of that, you get drafted. He had got drafted and tried to do that, whatever, but he got grabbed and he got sent off. Because he was an athlete, he ended up being an officer, and so he went and he did all this amazing stuff. Buzz is a hero. He saved a lot of lives. He was a great soldier. He has all these insane stories, but he came back and he was vilified for something that he was sent to. They were going to send him to jail if he didn't go fight. And when he got back, the protesters stole all of the soldiers' bags and destroyed all of their stuff. So he got off. All he had was his like backpack carry-on of all of these things that for the past years when he had been in Vietnam, he had accumulated all these gifts and things that he was bringing back. But when these protesters went through and they thought they were fighting the war, they weren't fighting the war. They were fighting these people that were sent there. Like, not a lot of people towards, like, in the draft, people didn't want to get drafted. But why are you protesting these veterans? Why did this anti-war sentiment become an anti-veteran sentiment? But now it's kind of flipped, where in this modern day and age, everyone's pro-veteran. It's pro-veteran almost to a fault. Like, if you go to the senators, every single political person is absolutely pro-veteran. I support our veterans, almost to the point that it's just become a talking point.
It's virtue signaling.
But isn't the ultimate extent of being pro-veteran being anti-war, where we shouldn't send our young people to die? Because that's what it is.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about what happened and why that sentiment is the way that it is, and is it become a kind of like a poison talking point?
So I think being anti-war is not a positive talking point in the United States anymore. Because even the people that you are told to think of as being anti-war, which is typically from, like, specifically the overholding, like, being overheld from Vietnam is considered the left part of the country. They're considered the anti-war part of the country for the most part, are not anti-war, as in the way you'd actually think of it. Like, remember, only one person voted against us going to war in Iraq, right? Not going to war, but against that bullshit, right? That was Bernie Sanders. It was in the Senate.
Feel the burn. Bernie 2024.
No. It was 99-1, and he was the only, I think it was a Patriot Act, but he was the only person that voted against that. It was bipartisan support going into Iraq and Afghanistan, and they both stood to profit from it. Like, it doesn't really matter. It's not, no side actually gives a fuck. on either side, right?
It's
So
just. Go on. Sorry.
we don't being anti-war is not an American public image point of view. We don't do that, and who fucking knows? Like, it's just what we've been led to believe. We aren't like forced into this shit. We don't really have a choice, I guess. I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that, to be honest.
But like moralistically, like in a perfect world, we wouldn't have war. Like that's an easy statement.
Yeah.
Like by rights, war is a bad thing. We shouldn't have wars. We shouldn't be going to wars.
War is always
If we go to wars, we have to go begrudgingly, and it's a sad thing. Like, but I feel like the fact that war is a sad thing doesn't mean that we have to be mad at veterans or we get to be mad at veterans.
So I think, because I feel like the reason, like, the being anti-war and anti-veteran part is very explainable from that part of the world.
Right. From a political
Like,
playing the game.
We can actually understand that. Like, we know that it was a social construct and that it was specifically orchestrated that way in order to shame the United States out of the war. Like, right, we know, this is going a little bit out there, but we know that there was Soviet influence in the Vietnam anti-war movement, and that was one of the big areas they targeted was the veterans, because it really fucking hacks at the American will to go to war whenever you are treating the people that actually went there like absolute dog shit. Whenever they go over there, they're going to be less effective because they know the people that they're supposed to be fighting for back home don't love them, don't care for them, don't want them to be there. It wasn't the war of their grandparents, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
it's not World War II where you went and you're saving the world.
And I think
you're shooting rice farmers.
I think the more interesting question is why is the original question is why is it anti-veteran to be anti-war? Why is being pro-war being pro-veteran? Because I don't think that's right. I don't think you can be pro-war and pro-veteran. I don't think you can be. But I think where the thought of, like, that train of thought comes from is from World War II, where we associate war and veteran equals good, and we associate them in the same basket as opposed to being able to separate them. They are...
Because you can't have veterans without war.
No.
And veterans are such a good thing.
Well, and we have such a fixation in this country of war and World War II stuff. There's been no, thank God, but there's been no war as big as World War II since World War II, right?
Yeah.
And
100%.
Specifically in terms of the amount of the American population involved in the armed forces. Because, God, how much of the population were veterans? It was like 30 or 40% of the male population in the United States served in World War II.
Not to mention, like,
It was,
everyone, like, just going into factories and, like, producing bombs, planes, medical supplies, and stuff like that, too. So, like, that's all part of the war effort.
Everyone had jobs.
Yeah.
And good paying jobs.
Yeah. So, like, I'm going to say that contributes to that, too. Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
The social pressure on the backside.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good point too, though. Is like because we live in a military industrial complex, everyone gets mad about it, and people are like, "That's why JFK got shot." But that's where we do. Like that's a big thing. Is like it's almost predatory. Like Max is you're kind of a prime example of it. Is college kids that get into a bunch of debt because they're pushed to go to college. College system is arguably failing.
No, not arguably.
And it's failing a lot of individuals. Yeah, it's absolutely failing a lot of individuals. But then these people, they come out with most of a degree or maybe a degree that's not phenomenally useful, hard to find a job. And then it's like, well, I have this debt. I can go into the military for 4 years and have no debt and come out with a job. Or you catch high schoolers that are kind of in that weird limbo where they're like, oh, I don't want to go to college. I don't want to go to community college. I don't want to just go to work. What do I do to go do something? And they're like, then they meet a recruiter and then they're like, oh, you can come do this thing that in our society we value so highly.
Well, so I anymore, I wouldn't say that's the case. Because we are actually actively pulling out of 2 wars right now, we are going through a reduction in our armed forces. The tone in the military has shifted. In 2005, 2006, and then when we start to see the troop surges later in that decade, and the most people were recruited for combat arms roles? Absolutely. But it's different whenever they are going into non-combat arms roles and they're going to more technical roles. They're going to mechanics. They're going into IT. They're going into medical and stuff. Because that's most of the makeup we're seeing now. People, like, the recruiting bonuses for getting someone in the infantry right now is fucking insane because they can't get people because no one wants to go and do that. We cannot maintain our military readiness levels of what they want us, of, like, what the armed forces committee and stuff want us to have because no one wants to go fight because there's nothing to fight right now. Because, we're not in 2 wars right now. But
Isn't that a thing? Like, we keep combat readiness to fight on 2 fronts. Isn't that like part of the official documentation? Like,
it might be.
I remember hearing that in the Romney Obama debate. I was watching some cutbacks to a real debate after the Trump Biden ones that were like absolute like garbage fires. So it's like, what did one of these actually sound like? And they were arguing about like how ready we should be and the number of ships we have. And one of the big talking points that came out was like, hey, we need to be able to have enough people to have essentially 2 armies to fight on 2 wars. Or fight on 2 fronts.
Which is
Military like readiness and makeup is a whole other can of worms in and of itself, in both political and military ideology. But one of the
Marcus, what's
up?
quick before Marcus goes, one of the things I'd like to point out though is that we are seeing most veterans from the GWOT, the Global War on Terror, are vehemently anti-war. Most of the ones in prominent positions are actually able to speak out, and you can hear their voices and stuff. Like, think of a famous veteran, and they probably have a sentiment close to it. They're all like getting into their late 30s now because they're all fucking teenagers whenever they went over there, right? They're all vehemently anti-war. None of them like war. They all think it's fucking terrible. They all think it's disgusting because they all went there, did that, got the fucking t-shirt, understand what it is. So I think the only people that we are seeing that are pro-veteran means being pro-war are the leaders that are trying to push us into more wars, like war hawks, the people that stand to benefit from us going to war. I don't think, for the most part, we see people in a conventional means, like in normal media, that really associate being pro-veteran as being pro-war.
it's kind of a holdover from that boomer generation where they're like, oh, like they're thinking World War II thing. They don't see this going to Baghdad, watching somebody get their leg blown off. This war is a bad thing. They're thinking of the Great Wars, not the modern wars.
Yeah,
That and they're making a lot of money off of it.
Yeah, it's the second one, not the first one. I don't think anyone looks at it and goes, it's a great war, or we're, like, has any possibility or potential for it, or leading in. I don't think anyone's going to like lead us into a war for like glory and honor or anything like that. I think it's purely motivated by money. There's one thing in this fucking country that our money wants.
I would agree with that 100%. You can just about trace back any major war and any point of history almost, and it's almost all about economic benefit. Like I had my bio 100 professor say, yeah, most wars are about resources and stuff like that. Like, that's a bio professor saying that. And then she said, well, except for maybe like World War II. I'm like, no. Like, you want resources. Like, what do you think Lebensraum was? To expand Germans' economy and expand their ability to like grow crops and like become productive. Like, that was the whole point of that. So like, she kind of missed the ball there. But like, for the most part, like, yeah, that's like everything's fueled by economics and stuff like that. So yeah.
So can we safely wrap up this discussion with, you are not anti-veteran if you're anti-war, unless you have some sort of agenda to manipulate
some financial backing.
Not even financial backing, but just an ulterior motive where it's not, you're trying to manipulate people with the way your phrasing works, with your rhetoric.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So I have one question that we can kind of close. do you think that we'll see more politicians and more veterans coming out of this, getting into kind of that political age where we will see people that are anti-war but pro-veteran? Is that something that as the wave of sentiment changes, do you think it'll swing that direction, or do you think that the defense companies will do their lobby work?
Well, what do you mean? Because I think that's two different questions. Because I don't think the defense agencies are going to not say that we aren't pro-veteran.
Well, that's fair, but do you think that this next wave, well, ignore the defense part, just the first part, do you think there's a next wave of these veteran types that are going into politics where we'll see a rising sentiment, where we'll see more people that are hyper pro-veteran and hyper anti-war? Do you think that's something that'll come up?
Yes, because veterans are, not to generalize, but are typically hyper motivated, know how to get stuff done, have been in areas where they've been taught to lead and taught to lead effectively, and heavily advocate for self-interest. And self-interest on their part is often seen as helping their community and avoiding war.
Being pro-veteran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Like how much? Okay, so if you had like, you can't like put something tangible for this, but like, do you think this is gonna be like super extensive, or it's gonna be like a noticeable difference, or do you think it's just going to be, like a slight upturn, I guess, for lack of words?
It'll be small. So the way you would be able to measure it would be like individual donations to pro-veteran organizations and stuff, and involvement in the community and stuff. Because if you start to look at the actual like communities that veterans have developed for themselves, they're growing just substantially, and the advocacy groups for these veterans and stuff are just amazing. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes the only like unifying ideology that they have is that they're veterans, and that they're mostly anti-war. You got some fucking nuts in there, but anyone that's ever actually fought in the wars typically don't have a desire for there to be more war.
Would you say, so like if you talk to like a veteran who's been in like multiple tours, would you say they almost have like an obligation to go back to serve another tour, and that like they may not want to, but like they feel like because of their knowledge and experience that they feel obligated to go overseas to make sure that they're
to prevent somebody else from doing what they
to prevent
going what they went through?
Would you say that's the motivator?
I don't really feel like
cases?
I can answer that question. There's not a lot of those people left in my army, and there's not a lot of like there's a lot of books that answer that question really well. I can take a stab at it, but I don't know if I necessarily feel comfortable lecturing the public on it. But
that's a good question, though,
because like
I think that sentiment exists.
I've heard it a lot of places. I've heard it a lot.
Because just think like it even comes up in rugby. It was like if I'm gonna like take a beating, we're all gonna take a beating. I might as well take double the beating so somebody else doesn't have to. Yeah. I feel like that kind of gets into like just human nature.
Well, that's a whole nother topic of psychology in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, okay, let's just say like if you're like, never mind. I'm not going there. Never mind. That's a different topic. But okay, like I just thought I would ask.
Topic for another day, maybe.
Yeah, probably not.
Somebody write that down so we can formulate a better question off of it.
Okay, we will. So
speaking of better questions,
next week.
So we're closing in on the end of the semester. Kind of looking at a transitionary period.
Oh, you're transitioning?
Do we want to try and? Thanks. But like, it's that time of the year, man. It's kind of getting to the end of the year. Do we want to try and do something more in that vein? Do we want to? Is that a direction we kind of want to move? Do we want to push that back another week?
Which vein? Oh.
Where it's like the year is jumping over, like we're having like a turnover. So do we want to talk about that next week, or do we want to do 2 weeks from now? Because 2 weeks from now would be the 20th, and then we'd have one more before the year skips over.
So I think we can hit one every week still. This sounds like admin stuff. This is boring.
Yeah. No, I was just say for topics wise, should we have one that's like end of the year themed, And if we do we want to do it?
Oh,
End of the year.
Because there's next weekend.
Obviously, right before the end of the year.
Okay, that was my question. Because I feel like we could do a whole theme one about like what we took from this year and what we want to do going into the next one.
Oh,
So I think that could be a one in itself, and we could probably do that the 27th. That's the last Sunday before the year ends.
Yeah.
So we have 2 in between. So we have 13th, 20th, 27th.
okay.
Cool. All right. So my topic for next week is people going overboard on Christmas and holiday decorations.
Oh, yes.
I like it.
Not exactly sure what direction I'm gonna take it in, but I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna fucking run with it.
Okay.
I believe in you.
Okay.
I want to talk about. So I've been hearing this statement a lot. I probably listen to like 15, 20 hours of Jocko podcast a week. So I want to talk about effective, like, fellowship and how that connects to where it's you have to do things in a certain way. You have to kind of broadcast yourself and what you're doing well and what it means to do that effectively. So playing the game as a follower with
That'll
the
be interesting.
intention of being effective leader. Because fellowship and leadership go hand in hand, and there's tricks to that trade, and I want to talk about that.
Sure.
That sounds cool. I'm glad you guys have more creativity than me, because I've decided that I wanted to talk about something I like in my life, and that is
I'm excited.
swords, but not necessarily swords themselves, but the sword classification. No, that's not good. I have to clean this off.
I don't know.
Because-
That is incredible.
To be fair, we were looking at a video
but,
chat, and Marcus just pulled out a sword. He was like, "And just by the way, just a sword, just
Yeah,
a straight up."
yeah.
He pulled out
He's
Narsil.
holding a sword right now. He's like, we should talk about swords.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, it's gonna be about swords. It's gonna be the classification. It's gonna be more European. Sorry, those katana-loving people of Japan or whatever you want to call those Chinese swords. I don't care. I do care, but I
Weebs.
don't care. I'm going to be talking about more European swords and how the classification didn't really exist at the time when they were being produced. Let's say in the medieval ages or medieval time period, okay, and then how it's more of a 19th century
Construct.
idea of
English
how we need
spaghetti.
to, yeah, construct, and how some of these terms are misappropriated, I guess. So yeah, there's a couple good YouTube videos I might recommend too if you're into it, from some people I watch. So yeah, that's
sounds
what
like
I
fun.
want to talk about. So
Hell yeah.
Yee rapper woo woo. Yeah. See you guys next
Yes,
week.
next week.
Do we
Yeah.
want to do a secret Santa within our group? That'd be fun.
oh, that'd be cool. I don't know how that
We
would
could
work
give
exactly,
each other
but-
a topic for each person to talk about. That'd be fun.
I
that
like
works. Yeah,
That'd be fun.
Perfect. So probably not next week, but the
Alright.
week after.
groovy.
We'll talk about it again. Okay, let's
Yeah.
end it. I want to say thanks to everyone for listening. Make sure to like,
Alright.
comment, subscribe. If you want, I don't think we've had a comment yet, so whoever comments first, you get a high five. We'll say thank you. But yeah,
Yeah.
see you next week.